The day had started like any normal research trip for the family. They had been invited to join a group of scientists who often traveled to different planets to observe wildlife and natural environments. It was meant to be a simple, peaceful visit to a planet known for its colorful forests and gentle atmosphere. Nobody imagined anything unusual would happen there. The parents had brought their young daughter along because the area was promoted as a safe zone. The forest was famous for its glowing trees and soft blue light that spread naturally through the leaves, making everything look like a quiet dreamland. As the group moved through the forest, the little girl walked a few steps behind her parents. She was small, curious, and easily excited by anything that looked magical. And this forest looked magical in every direction. Soft mist floated close to the ground. Colorful insects flew around like floating lights. Every flower had a glow, and every tree seemed to hum quietly. The girl had never seen anything so beautiful, and she kept pointing at different things her parents had already walked past at one moment. While the adults were discussing some rock samples, the girl noticed a tiny creature sitting on a branch. It looked like a butterfly, but it was larger, with bright orange wings and glowing spots that gently pulsed. The creature seemed unbothered by the humans and fluttered away slowly. The girl watched it fly, smiling, and then saw it land on another branch deeper inside the forest. She laughed softly and walked toward it, trying not to scare it away. She thought she would only take a few steps and return. But the butterfly-like creature kept moving ahead, almost as if it wanted her to follow. Without realizing it, she drifted farther and farther away from the main group. She walked around a large tree, stepped over some soft plants, and squeezed through two vines that formed a small doorway. When she looked back, she couldn't see her parents anymore. But she didn't panic at first, because the forest looked gentle, and the creature was still in front of her. She followed it a bit more, thinking she would just touch its wings once before going back. At the same time, her parents finally finished discussing their samples. They turned to check on their daughter, expecting her to be close by. When they saw an empty space instead, they called her name. There was no answer. They walked around the spot, thinking she might be behind a tree or crouching somewhere, but she was nowhere in sight. Their hearts suddenly tightened. They called again, louder, now with clear worry in their voices. The other members of the team stopped what they were doing and immediately joined the search. The forest looked calm, but now every shadow felt suspicious. One of the researchers quickly launched a small scanner drone that floated above the group and began sweeping the area with heat sensors. The drone moved silently through the trees, scanning the ground for traces of movement. It soon picked up several large footprints that did not match anything the humans had made. The prints were deep, wide, and long, as if huge creatures had recently stepped there. The edges of the prints were fresh, and the soil still looked pressed down. The rescue team exchanged worried looks. They had seen images of such prints in old research reports. They didn't like the match they were seeing. These prints belonged to the Titan apes, a species native to this planet. The apes were known for their intimidating size and strength. They were not classified as aggressive, but every guidebook advised people to avoid disturbing them. The apes rarely interacted with humans, and when they did, they stayed distant. Nobody had ever reported being attacked, but their power alone made them dangerous if anything startled them. The parents began to panic more. The idea of their small daughter walking into Titan ape territory filled them with fear. The scientists tried to calm them, saying they didn't know for sure if the apes were involved, but the worry was visible on everyone's face. The search team followed the footprints, moving cautiously through the glowing forest, while calling her name again and again. Meanwhile, the girl had reached a mossy area where the glowing creature finally landed on a fallen log. She bent down slightly to get a closer look. She didn't touch it, but she admired its bright wings. The creature fluttered away again, and she laughed, but then suddenly felt her foot slip. The ground beneath her was softer than she expected. She stepped back and tried to regain balance, but the moss moved with her weight, and she fell sideways onto a pile of leaves. Nothing hurt her, but the fall startled her. She sat up, brushing leaves off her clothes, and only then noticed that the forest around her was much quieter than before. She looked around slowly. She didn't see her parents. She didn't see the butterfly-like creature. She didn't even see the familiar trees she had walked past earlier. Everything looked different, and she felt a small tremble inside her chest. She stood and called out softly at first, then louder, hoping someone would answer. But only her own voice echoed weakly. The glowing leaves swayed gently, and for a moment she felt completely alone. She took a step back, unsure which direction she had come from. That was when she heard something low, deep, and rhythmic. It wasn't a growl or a roar. It was more like a distant drumbeat. She turned slowly toward the sound. A large shadow moved behind a tree, then another beside it. Her breath caught. Her tiny hands curled nervously. More shadows approached, and the rhythmic sound grew louder. She didn't scream. She simply stood there, frozen, unsure of what she was seeing. Then, one of the shapes stepped forward. A giant ape, at least 3 times taller than an adult human, emerged from behind the glowing trees. Its fur was thick and dark, but the glowing forest light gave it a soft silver outline. Its eyes were bright, almost shining, but not angry. Another ape stepped closer, and then another, until she was surrounded by at least 6 of them. The girl trembled, but didn't run. The apes did not roar or reach for her. Instead, they stood in a circle around her, leaving a clear space so she wasn't trapped. Their breathing was heavy but steady. One of the older apes leaned forward and gently moved a broken branch out of her way, as if cleaning the ground near her dot. She didn't understand what they wanted. She didn't understand why they had all gathered around her. But somehow, she sensed they weren't trying to harm her. She took a small step backward, and one of the younger apes made a soft, musical sound, not loud, not threatening. Almost like a warning, but also like reassurance. Back in the forest, the rescue team continued moving through the trees. The drone finally picked up a small heat signature tiny, human-sized, along with several extremely large signatures nearby. The image was blurry, but it unmistakably showed the little girl standing among the giant shapes. The parents gasped. Some of the team members whispered in shock. Nobody fully understood what the apes were doing. Were they guarding her? Surrounding her? Preparing to attack? Nobody knew. But one thing was clear. They had to find her fast, and deep in the glowing forest. The girl looked up at the towering figures around her, her heart beating fast, as something she could not explain was silently taking shape. The little girl stood very still, staring up at the giant creatures surrounding her. She had never seen anything like them before. Their size alone was enough to make anyone freeze. Each one looked as tall as a small tree. Their arms were thick like pillars, and their fur shifted gently under the glowing forest light. She felt like she had stepped into a world that did not belong to humans, a place where she was only a tiny visitor. The circle the apes had formed around her was wide, giving her space to move. None of them touched her or came too close. They simply stood there, watching her with glowing eyes that reflected the forest light. Their presence felt powerful, but strangely not aggressive. She didn't understand why they had surrounded her, but they did not seem angry. They were breathing deeply, almost slowly, as if studying her very carefully. Her first instinct was to call for her parents. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her voice felt stuck. She swallowed and tried again, the word getting stuck halfway. She was afraid that if she spoke too loudly, she might startle the creatures. And she didn't know what they might do if startled. One of the apes, the one standing directly in front of her, made a low humming sound. It didn't sound dangerous. It was more like a communication call, something she didn't understand but didn't fear. The ape tilted its head slightly, studying her. Its eyes were bright but calm. She could feel her heartbeat calming a little, just from the way the creature stood. It didn't look angry or tense. It looked curious. She slowly lowered her hands, which had been tightly held against her chest. She took a small breath, and then another. One of the apes shifted slightly, moving its foot back to adjust its stance. The movement was gentle, not sudden, as if it didn't want to scare her. She noticed something else, too. The way they moved didn't match the pictures she had seen in old research books. Those images made Titan apes look wild, unpredictable, and frightening. But the real ones standing around her seemed different. They were cautious, controlled, and strangely gentle with their movements. The ground beneath her feet felt soft. The glowing moss gave off a faint warmth, and she tried to focus on that feeling to calm herself. She remembered the glowing butterfly-like creature, the one she had followed earlier. If she hadn't chased it, she wouldn't be here right now, in the middle of a circle formed by the biggest animals she had ever seen. She wondered if the glowing creature had led her here on purpose, or if everything was just an accident. The ape closest to her bent forward slightly, placing one huge hand on the ground. It made a soft, deep sound, something like a slow drumbeat. Then it looked toward another part of the forest. The other apes did the same, turning their heads in that direction. The girl didn't understand what they were sensing, but something had clearly caught their attention. She turned her head a little and looked where they were looking. She saw nothing unusual, just more trees and glowing leaves. But the apes remained focused, listening. They were acting like guards, not captors. That realization made her feel something strange, like she was being protected instead of surrounded. She took a tiny step backward. One of the apes immediately lifted a hand, not in a threatening way, but like a gesture asking her to stay still. She froze again. The ape lowered its hand slowly, showing there was no danger as long as she didn't run. She nodded without thinking, even though she knew they didn't understand human gestures. But maybe they understood her movement more than she realized that far away from the circle. The rescue team was still moving through the forest. The drone's blurry footage had made everyone tense. The adults couldn't tell if the apes were holding the girl hostage or trying to keep her in one place. The parents walked quickly, almost running, but the scientists reminded them to stay quiet. Loud noises might only make the situation worse. The drone hovered above, scanning the ground and picking up heat signatures. The large shapes were moving slowly in a circular pattern, keeping the smaller human shape in the center. Every member of the rescue team knew they had to be careful. They had no idea how the apes might react to a group of humans approaching. Back with the girl, one of the apes made a soft noise again. This time the sound was higher, almost like a whistle. Another ape answered with a similar sound. They were communicating with each other, clearly discussing something about her. The girl looked from one ape to another, not understanding their language, but recognizing the pattern. They were not panicking. They were not upset. They were simply deciding what to do next. She slowly lifted her hand and placed it over her heart, trying to show them she was scared, but not harmful. She didn't know if the gesture mattered to them, but the ape in front of her blinked slowly, almost in a comforting way. It made a soft, gentle sound to sound, unlike the deep vibrations she heard earlier. This one felt almost warm, like a lullaby made of earth and wind. She felt a little bolder now. She whispered softly, "I'm not here to hurt you." Her voice was quiet and shaky. She didn't expect them to understand, but speaking made her feel less alone. The ape nearest to her took a single step forward, not a big step, just enough to close the distance by a small amount. It was slow, careful, and measured. Then it lowered itself onto one knee, bringing its enormous face a little closer to her height. She held her breath. The ape sniffed the air around her gently, like it was checking her scent. Its breath was warm, and its eyes were soft. After examining her, the ape leaned back slightly and made another sound, this one almost like approval. The other apes responded with short calls, too. They were agreeing with something. She didn't know what, but they all seemed to reach a decision together. After a few seconds, the ape nearest to her turned and looked toward the deeper part of the forest. Then, slowly, the apes parted their circle, but they didn't walk away. Instead, they stepped aside in a line, leaving an open space between them that led into a path she hadn't noticed earlier. The ape in front looked back at her, as if telling her to follow. The girl hesitated. She wasn't sure if she should go with them or stay where she was. But when she looked around, the forest behind her seemed too confusing to navigate alone. The glowing trees all looked similar, and she had already gotten lost once. Maybe the apes knew a safer place. The leading ape took a few steps down the path, then paused and turned its head back toward her. It waited. The gentle glow of the leaves reflected off its fur, giving it a peaceful appearance. The girl slowly walked toward the path, stopping when she reached the space between two apes. They stepped back slightly, letting her through. She walked carefully, her steps small and quiet. The apes fell into formation around her again, but this time they weren't closing her in a circle. They were walking with her as a group, some in front, some behind, some on the sides. She realized they were guiding her, not trapping her. She didn't know where they were taking her, but she felt strangely safe now. As they moved through the forest, she noticed how confident the apes were. They didn't look confused by the twisting paths or the glowing plants. They seemed to know every inch of the land. Every time the girl looked nervous, one of the apes made a soft sound, almost like reassurance. She didn't understand their language, but she understood their intention not far behind them. The rescue team finally reached a place where the footprints were clearer. They noticed the fresh marks on the ground, the prints of several apes walking together, moving in an organized direction. One scientist knelt down and examined the soil closely. The pattern suggested a group movement, not a chaotic one. That made everyone even more confused. Why would the apes move together in such a calm formation with a child among them? The girl continued following the apes deeper into the glowing forest, unaware that the rescue team was slowly catching up. Every step she took felt like part of the strange dream. She didn't know what was happening, but she trusted the gentle calls the apes made every few moments. Something unusual was happening, something she didn't understand yet, and as she walked through the soft light of the forest, she couldn't shake the feeling that the apes weren't just guiding her. Somewhere they were guiding her away from something. The path the apes were guiding the little girl through did not look like an ordinary forest path. It twisted between tall, glowing trees and curved around moss-covered stones that looked like they had been there for centuries. The girl walked quietly, trying not to make any sound that might disturb the creatures moving beside her. She still didn't know why they were guiding her, but she could tell they had a purpose. The leading ape turned its head back every few steps, checking if she was still following. Whenever she slowed down, it paused. Whenever she grew scared and looked around nervously, one of the apes made a soft sound, almost like a reminder that she was not alone. Their presence still felt overwhelming, but not threatening. The deeper they went into the forest, the more the air changed. The glowing light seemed brighter, but the air felt heavier, like something powerful was nearby. The girl noticed a faint vibration under her feet, so gentle it felt more like a soft hum. She didn't know where it was coming from, but she sensed the apes did, They were walking carefully, as if avoiding stepping on certain parts of the ground. The older ape in front slowed its pace and touched the soil lightly with its huge hand. It sniffed the air, growled softly, not angrily, and then continued walking. The rest of the apes followed its lead, signaling each other with gentle sounds. The girl tried to keep up, taking small steps and looking around constantly. The glowing leaves and soft mist made everything feel both beautiful and confusing. She wondered if her parents were looking for her. She wondered if they were close. The thought made her chest tighten. She hoped they weren't too scared. After a few minutes, the path opened slightly. The apes stopped in place. The girl also stopped, unsure what was happening. The leading ape raised its head and looked forward, its muscles tightening slightly, though not in an aggressive way. It felt more like caution. The girl followed its gaze. At first, she couldn't see anything unusual. Just more trees, more glowing moss. Then she noticed something floating in the air near a cluster of bushes. It was small, round, and pulsing with a dim, shifting light. It moved slowly, drifting in a circular pattern. Not like a creature, more like a device. Her heart skipped. She recognized it. Before she had fallen earlier, before she woke surrounded by the apes, she had seen something like this. She had seen a flash of white light and a small floating object like the one now drifting ahead of them. She didn't know what it was, but she remembered feeling dizzy just before she fainted. The apes reacted the moment she looked at it. They moved closer around her, forming a half circle. Their breaths grew heavier. They weren't scared, but they were alert. One of the younger apes made a loud call, not aggressive but firm. Another answered. They were calling to each other, warning each other about the floating object. The girl took a tiny step forward. The oldest ape gently placed its hand in front of her, stopping her. It didn't push or force. It simply blocked her path, shaking its head slightly. She understood. It didn't want her going near that thing. She whispered softly, "I saw it before. I think it made me fall." The ape didn't understand the words, but it understood her tone. It growled quietly and looked at the device again. She could feel the tension in the air. The apes were not afraid of the forest. They were not afraid of any creature living here. But this small floating thing, they didn't trust it. The device moved a little closer, its light flickering. A faint electrical noise crackled from it, like static. The girl stepped back instinctively. The apes leaned forward slightly, ready to move if the object came any nearer. Then one of the smallest apes reached out and plucked a glowing fruit from a bush nearby. It tossed the fruit gently at the device. The fruit hit the light field around it, bounced back, and rolled onto the ground. The floating object flickered again and made a buzzing sound, like a warning. The oldest ape growled louder. It wasn't trying to attack. It was trying to scare the object away. But the device didn't move. The girl watched with wide eyes. "What is that?" she whispered. She didn't expect an answer, but speaking helped her understand her own fear. After a short tense moment, the leading ape gently nudged her shoulder, guiding her away from the object. It wanted her to avoid it at all costs. She understood and stepped back, allowing the apes to lead her further down the path. As they moved away, she glanced over her shoulder. The glowing object stayed behind, but she felt uneasy, knowing it had appeared twice near her. Whatever it was, it had not harmed her directly, but it had caused something earlier. Something she couldn't explain. The apes continued leading her deeper into the forest, moving faster now, as if eager to reach a particular place. She wasn't sure where they were taking her, but the forest seemed to grow brighter ahead. The glowing trees were closer together, forming natural arches overhead. The air felt warm and comforting. After some time, the group emerged into a wide open clearing. The clearing looked different from the rest of the forest. The glow here was stronger, almost golden. Soft mist floated above the ground, and the air felt warmer. Strange flowers shaped like small lanterns grew everywhere. The girl stood in awe. She had never seen anything this beautiful. The apes walked straight into the clearing and sat around the edges, creating a protective circle around her again. But this time, the circle felt calm, not tense. It felt like they had brought her to a safe place. The oldest ape walked to the center of the clearing and touched the ground with its hand. A gentle wave of light spread through the grass, like a ripple. The girl gasped softly. The clearing responded to touch, glowing brighter under the ape's palm. She walked closer, feeling safe enough now to explore a little. The ground beneath her felt warm, almost like the earth itself was alive. The apes watched her carefully, but didn't stop her. She walked around, touching the glowing flowers and smiling at their delicate light dot as she moved. One of the younger apes approached her with a handful of glowing berries. It held them out to her, offering them gently. She hesitated, then took one. It tasted sweet, like honey and fruit mixed together. She looked up at the ape and gave a small smile. The ape made a soft sound, pleased. Meanwhile, far behind them, the rescue team had finally reached a part of the forest where the drone picked up clearer signals. The footprints were fresher here. The scientists could tell the apes were no longer wandering. They were heading somewhere specific. The parents walked even faster now, calling out softly, hoping their daughter might hear them. But the forest was too thick, too deep. Their voices didn't reach her. Back in the clearing, the girl sat on a patch of soft moss, eating the glowing berries. She wasn't afraid anymore. She didn't feel trapped. She felt safer than she expected to feel in the presence of such giant creatures. She looked around at the apes and whispered, "Thank you for helping me." The apes didn't know the words, but they understood her gentle tone. One of them leaned back against a tree, watching her like a guardian. Another walked the perimeter of the clearing, checking for disturbances. The oldest ape looked at her with a calm expression. Its eyes held something she didn't understand, wisdom, maybe. Or concern. She didn't know why they had brought her here. She didn't know what strange thing the floating device was, or why it had appeared near her twice. But she felt the apes knew more than she did. They knew this forest. They knew its secrets. And they knew something was coming, something they were preparing her for, even if she didn't understand it yet. And as she sat quietly in the glowing clearing, she felt something deeper, something she couldn't explain. The apes were not just guiding her. They were protecting her from something she still didn't see. The next few days moved in a way that felt slow and fast at the same time. Everyone around seemed busy trying to understand what had happened, but inside my head, things were even busier. Every moment replayed itself again and again, especially that strange feeling I had when I realized the truth. It was the kind of truth that didn't just surprise a person. It stayed with them, shaped their thoughts, and made them question what else they did not know. I woke up earlier than usual that morning. The air felt different. There was no loud noise, no rush, no whispering in the hall like before. It was almost peaceful, which was strange because we were still in the middle of something none of us fully understood. Maybe everyone was just tired, or maybe they were waiting for someone else to make the next move. Either way, I could feel the silence pressing on my ears. I walked outside and saw two people talking quietly near the corner. Their faces looked tense, but when they saw me, they tried to act normal. That only made it clearer something important was going on. I didn't ask them anything, partly because I didn't want to interrupt, and partly because I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer yet. Sometimes the truth comes at you even when you're not ready. While I was trying to figure out what to do next, a message came asking me to report to the main room. The moment I stepped in, I could feel the tension. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was something in the middle, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the right moment to let it out. They asked me what I had felt during the last incident. Not what I saw. Not what I thought what I felt. That was strange, because feelings are not something people usually ask for in a situation like this. They wanted details, even the small ones, things I didn't think mattered. But I tried my best to explain it honestly. The confusion, the heaviness, a strange pull in my chest, the sense that something was trying to reach out. They listened carefully, not interrupting, not reacting, just absorbing every word. One of them slowly nodded and said something that made the room even more silent than before. "You're connected to this," he said softly, like he wasn't sure if he should say it out loud. Maybe more than we expected. I didn't know what to say. Connected how? Why me? What did that even mean? I waited for him to explain, but he didn't. He just looked at the others, and they exchanged a quiet understanding. Later that day, I finally got some time alone outside. The wind was cool, and the sun was low in the sky, turning everything a warm orange color. For a moment, I forgot all the questions and worries. I just watched the light hit the ground, watched the shadows stretch out. But even then, my mind kept circling back to the same thought. Why did they say I was connected? As I stood there, someone approached me. The footsteps were soft, but I could tell they had been looking for me. They stopped beside me and didn't speak at first. We both watched the sunset silently. It felt almost peaceful. Finally, the person spoke. You shouldn't worry too much about what they said. But the way they said, it didn't sound comforting. It sounded like there was something they weren't sure how to explain. I asked what the others meant. Why did they look at me that way? Why did they keep asking about feelings instead of facts? The person hesitated before answering. Because you reacted differently from everyone else. You didn't just witness what happened, you felt it. They looked at me as if waiting for me to realize the meaning on my own, but I didn't understand. At least not yet. They continued. There's something about you that responded to that moment. Something unusual. Something we need to understand before anything else happens. That made me even more confused. I wasn't special. I wasn't trained for anything extraordinary. I wasn't stronger or smarter or more experienced than anyone else. So why me? Why was I the one feeling things no one else did? The person didn't say much more after that. They left me alone with my thoughts, which honestly was the last thing I needed. But maybe it was the only way I would start to truly think about it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound felt louder than usual. The hum of the lights, the soft tapping of metal, the distant footsteps, it all made my mind jump from one thought to another. I kept trying to calm myself, to tell myself that everything was fine, but the more I tried, the more restless I felt. At some point, I got up and walked toward the observation area. It was quiet there, and it always felt slightly safer. The large window showed the outside clearly, and sometimes just looking at the open space made things feel less overwhelming. I leaned against the railing and took a long breath. That's when something strange happened again. A sudden warmth spread through my chest, not painful, but strong enough to make me pause. It was the same feeling I had before, during the incident. The same strange pull, the same sense that something was reaching toward me. I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to steady myself. The warmth moved slowly, like it was trying to tell me something, though I didn't know what. The air felt thicker. The room felt heavier. And then, as suddenly as it started, it faded away. I stood there frozen. Was it happening again? Was this feeling really real? Or was it just stress? I didn't want to panic, so I forced myself to breathe slowly until the feeling disappeared completely. The next morning, I talked to the same person again. I told them about the warmth, about how it felt similar to the last time. They didn't look surprised. They didn't even look confused. They simply nodded as if they had been expecting it. "It's getting stronger," they said. "That means we don't have much time." I stared at them. Not much time for what? But before I could ask, they motioned for me to follow them. We walked down a hallway I had never been in before. The walls were lined with equipment and quiet machinery. It felt like an area that only a few people were allowed to enter. They opened a door and led me into a room that looked nothing like the others. There was no clutter, no papers, no mess, just a clean, bright space with a single platform in the middle. The room felt too quiet, too still, like it was waiting for something. "This is where we're going to figure out what's happening to you," they said. Their voice was calm, but there was a seriousness behind it that made me uneasy. I stepped forward, feeling unsure, but also knowing I couldn't walk away from this. Whatever was happening to me was real, and ignoring it wouldn't make it disappear. As I stood there, the room lights adjusted around me. I felt another wave of warmth, but this time it didn't scare me. It felt almost familiar, like something I had known long before, but never realized. The person watched carefully. Others joined, observing quietly. There were no loud machines, no sharp sounds, just stillness. The warmth grew again, filling my chest, moving through my arms, settling in my fingertips. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to understand it, trying to feel what it meant. And then, very softly, something changed. A soft echo, almost like a whisper, brushed the edge of my mind. It wasn't a voice, not in the normal sense. It was more like a presence, something aware, something gentle but powerful. My eyes snapped open, and I stepped back, breathing harder than before. What was that? I whispered. The person didn't answer right away. They exchanged a look with the others before turning back to me. "That," they said quietly, "is why you're important." I didn't understand the full meaning yet, but deep inside, I knew one thing: whatever was ahead. Things were about to become very different. And whether I was ready or not, I was already in the middle of it. The moment they said I was important, the room felt smaller, like the walls had quietly moved closer. I didn't feel important. I didn't even feel confident. If anything, I felt even more confused than before. But everyone around me seemed calmer now, as if something they had been waiting for finally happened. I stood there quietly, trying to understand what they saw in me that I couldn't see in myself. They asked me to sit while they checked a few things. They didn't touch me or use any sharp tools, nothing like that. It was more like they were trying to read the air around me, almost as if whatever was happening wasn't inside my body, but somewhere just outside it. One of them watched the screens with a serious expression, while another carefully looked at how I reacted to the strange warmth. After a while, they finally told me that what I felt wasn't random. It wasn't stress. It wasn't imagination. It was something real. Something that had been slowly waking up every time I was near that strange energy during the earlier incidents. Asked the question that had been bothering me since the beginning. Why me? I expected a clear answer, something direct that made sense. But they didn't have one. One of them shrugged lightly before replying. "We don't know yet," he said. "But something is choosing you, or reaching out to you. And whatever it is, it trusts you more than anyone else here." His words made me think for a long moment. Trust. That was not a simple word. Trust meant connection. Trust meant purpose. But trust also meant responsibility. And that was the part that scared me. After some time in that quiet room, they finally told me I could leave for the day. My head was already full, and they knew I needed time to process everything. As I walked out, I felt everyone's eyes on me, not in a bad way, but in a way that made it clear they were expecting something from me. Even though nobody knew exactly what. Outside the room, The hallway felt brighter than usual. People walked past me, talking about normal things, breakfast schedules, small updates. None of them knew what was happening with me. None of them knew about the warmth, the strange presence, or the way everything inside me felt like it was shifting. For a moment, I envied them. I wished I could go back to being just another person in the crowd. But I knew things would never be that simple again. By the time I reached my room, I felt exhausted. Not physically, but mentally. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, wondering how I was supposed to deal with everything. Should I tell someone? Should I keep quiet? Should I be worried or calm? I didn't know, so instead I just tried to take a long breath and clear my thoughts. A soft knock came at my door. When I opened it, I saw the same person who had been guiding me since the beginning. They stepped inside, closed the door behind them, and sat down across from me. Their expression wasn't tense, but it wasn't relaxed either. There was something thoughtful behind their eyes. "You looked overwhelmed," they said softly. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." I nodded slowly. I appreciated that they noticed, even though I wasn't sure what to say. I tried explaining how everything felt confusing, heavy, strange, and yet somehow meaningful. They listened carefully, never interrupting, never dismissing any part of what I said. When I finished, they took a slow breath before responding. "There's something you need to understand," they said. "What you're experiencing. It doesn't happen to just anyone. It's rare. And it's not dangerous, not unless you fight against it. The more you accept it, the clearer everything will become." Their words made sense, but they didn't make things easier. Accepting something I didn't understand felt impossible. But at the same time, ignoring it also felt impossible. I asked them if they had seen this happen before. They paused, then shook their head. "Not exactly. But I'd seen something close to it. And I know it always leads somewhere important." Somewhere important. Those two words stayed with me long after they left. Later that evening, I went for a walk outside, hoping the fresh air would help me think. The sky was slowly turning darker, mixing soft blues with fading orange light. The world felt quiet, almost peaceful. Yet my mind kept spinning. As I reached the open area near the fence, that warmth returned. But this time, it didn't surprise me. It felt familiar, like it was becoming a part of me. My heartbeat slowed, and the world around me seemed to fade just a little. I didn't panic. Instead, I stood still and let the feeling wash over me. The warmth grew stronger, and for a second, I felt that same presence again. A soft pressure in my mind, like someone gently trying to get my attention. Not threatening, not forceful, just present. I closed my eyes and tried to focus on it. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, but somehow focusing felt right. And then something unexpected happened. A picture, faint, unclear, flashed in my mind. It wasn't a memory, because I had never seen it before. It looked like a place, somewhere open, bright, almost glowing. My eyes opened quickly as the image faded. I touched my forehead, confused. Was that real? Was I imagining it? Or was it coming from whatever was trying to reach me? That night, I didn't sleep again. Instead, I lay awake, thinking about the strange image. The place had looked distant, but peaceful. There were no people in it, no danger, just a sense of calm. Why would something show me that? What was it trying to tell me? By morning, I had made up my mind. I needed answers, even if the answers scared me. I went back to the same person who had helped me before. They looked surprised to see me so early, but they quickly understood that something had happened. I explained the image, describing it as clearly as I could. They didn't interrupt. They didn't question me. They simply listened. When I finished, they looked thoughtful for a long time. Then they said quietly, "It's trying to communicate." The word communicate felt heavy. I wasn't sure if I was ready for something like that. Talking to something I didn't understand, something I couldn't see, it felt overwhelming. But at the same time, a part of me knew I couldn't run from it now. Not when things were becoming clearer. They led me back to the same room as before. This time, the atmosphere felt different, more focused. The air felt charged, like the room knew something important was about to happen. They asked me to sit again. The moment I did, the warmth began rising inside me without any warning. It spread quickly through my chest, my arms, my head, almost like it knew I was ready this time. I closed my eyes again. The room faded away. All I could feel was the warmth, steady and strong. And slowly, the presence returned. It was clear now, not like a whisper anymore, but like a gentle touch on my thoughts. I breathed slowly and let it in. Then the image returned, the same place, brighter now, clearer. I could almost feel the air in that place, calm and clean. I wasn't scared. I wasn't confused. I was connected. Suddenly, I understood something I hadn't understood before, not in words, but in feeling. Whatever was reaching out to me wasn't trying to control me or scare me. It wasn't dangerous. It was asking for help. And somehow, I could feel that it had been waiting a long time for me to acknowledge it. When I opened my eyes, everyone in the room stared at me with quiet anticipation. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't even know what I was supposed to do next. But I knew this was only the beginning, and whatever was ahead, I wouldn't be facing it alone. Something had chosen me. Something needed me. And now, I was finally ready to understand why.